D&D is a very incongruous game. It is made up of so many diverse aspects and features that we can't really condense it down into anything comprehensible. It's really more of an experience than it is something that can be explained in any sort of comprehensible manner. Now, what this means is that it has a lot of mysteries, a lot of hidden aspects to it, a lot of small nuances that most people don't catch on to right away. This is a video that I hope to use to illuminate one key, fundamental, basic aspect of D&D. And this is one that many DMs, first-time DMs, have extreme difficulty with when they're first starting off, and that is the ability to improvise. Now, when I say improvise, it's a very simple thing, just like you've seen on any of those improv shows, like whose line is it anyway, anything like that. Now, what I'm talking about is the ability to change what you're doing or what you're thinking on your feet and respond to certain things going on, certain things happening, certain things going wrong, or just coming up with things on the spot. And really, the purpose behind it is essentially that many DMs find themselves in a sort of rigid plan when they plan out a session. They think the players are going to do this, this, and this, X, Y, and Z in order, and then they don't, and then they have difficulty reacting to that change of plan. Like if the characters do X, Y, and then do M, then the DM can have extreme difficulty in sort of getting a new plan together and figuring something out to follow along after what the characters do. And this becomes an issue very quickly when the DM has to rely on that plan and nothing else, and then they get stuck in it. So when things don't go right at one junction, it doesn't go right at the next junction because they needed something back there. Like if I say I need the characters to get captured so that they can be saved by this NPC who gives them a quest to go and do a thing. Okay, X, Y, Z. They don't get captured. They manage to fight off the guards. They run away. They do something that I didn't expect, and I'm unable to sort of prevent them from doing that because they're smart players and good players. Well, if I don't manage to get them to be caught, then I can't put them in the prison so they can be saved by an NPC. So what would I do here? I would improvise and say, okay, the NPC simply happens upon them and helps them escape the guards, if that's the plan they went with. And then he gives them the quest, yada, 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 whatever. And that's a small shift, admittedly, but it is a significant one. Because it represents that ability to change, not on a dime, but just be able to change your plan in a session. Because many DMs, they have very, very specific order that they need things to happen, and they want things to happen a certain way. They want a certain level of control over the players, which leads to railroading, which leads to a not fun session. And for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to lay out my personal philosophy on the key to a good session. The only things that any session needs to consist of. Everything else is fluid and has to be kept improvisable. So the three things are something cool to fight, a good combat, an interesting enemy, something that's just fun, a fun combat encounter. Uh, Someone interesting to interact with. That means an NPC that is just fun to talk to, fun to get involved with in some way, be it an enemy, a random shopkeeper, friendly NPC, it doesn't matter, just a character that the party is going to enjoy interacting with. Then number three, something cool to look at. Now this could be a cool puzzle, a good riddle, a cool map that you came up with, nice art for an NPC, just something cool to look at, some cool phenomenon uh, in the game session, like a cool idea, you know. For example, a favorite of mine would be in the Tomb of Annihilation, the dinosaur racing that is available in the first section of Chult that they visit. That would be a cool thing to look at, and a cool encounter and a cool bit of a session, which automatically I don't think I've ever seen a party or anyone not think that that was cool. Because when you hear, okay, yeah, there's dinosaur riding available, generally 9 times out of 10, players are going to be rather interested in that. They will go towards that, and then it'll just be a thing that they do for a little bit. It's cool. Sometimes not, it's not required, obviously, but just that is my three main points for a good session, and that's what you need to be able to improvise. You need to be able to improvise fun NPCs. And usually what this means is just being able to do something off the cuff. So instead of just having a bland, boring shopkeeper sell something to the PCs when they want to buy something, instead you think of just some sort of a quirk or something to make them stand out. For example, um, let's just homebrew a shopkeeper real quick. Uh, PCs enter and he is tucked in like a back corner, and then when they enter and like ring the bell for service, he pops out of this cabinet, from the back room in like in those old Dracula movies where like he rises out of the coffin in like that solid wooden kind of pose. And just he does something like that out of the cabinet. There's a better way to describe that, I'm sure, but just for the sake of simplicity, he does that. And he walks up to them very slowly with his arms crossed, and then says, just like in a slow, methodical voice, "What can I sell you? Have you come looking for the oranges?" Or just some random item. Just something so that the characters go, "This is weird," because players generally like something weird and interesting because it makes them want to question or makes them want to try things. So they'll want to like push to see how he'll react to certain things based on what they know about him. They'll ask about the oranges, why he's so weird, how he did the thing where he just popped out of the cabinet like he was getting out of coffin. They'll ask if he's a vampire, things like that. And that's just a random NPC that you need to be able to come up with off. I say need, but just really, it's just a matter of confidence in your ability to create NPCs. And that means instead of having these long listed out like personality traits, I mean just the random people that you have to come up with on the spot. Being able to improvise a fun character can save a session. I'm serious. If things aren't landing, if your players are having a boring time, throw a cool NPC at them and you're good. And that means just well, I would suggest a voice. So just any random voice that you've been considering, thinking about, it's not quite finished, you're like trying to practice it, just take your half finished version, chuck it out there, and have a laugh at yourself. And that'll be fun for everybody, I promise. Because something weird, uninteresting, or just you making an ass of yourself is guaranteed to make your players have a at least okay time with the session, I promise you. And then for something to fight, to be able to improvise that, just essentially it means being able to respond in combat to things happening that you didn't expect. Like the thing that happens to every DM is one of two things in their first sort of combat encounters. It's either the players massacre the enemies, or the players get massacred by the enemies because of dice or DM misbalancing. And so what you kind of need to be able to do here is improvise based on what's already been established. Like, again, just to make a quick example, if the players enter a cave and start attacking a group of kobolds, and then they just wipe the floor with these kobolds, even though they're level 1, but they roll really well, they get the surprise round, they just obliterate 9 out of the 10 kobolds over there. Instead of having that last kobold attack and then die, have him run away, and then suddenly in the hallway that he left through, there just so happens to be a trap that you hadn't originally planned for there to be. But now you've improvised and you've said, okay, there's a trap, he's hiding behind it, and he's going to pull the string to, I don't know, have a boulder fall on the players. Doesn't matter, just some sort of a change. Similarly, in the same vein, is if they start masking your BBEG, the big bad of the whole dungeon, have something change about the combat to facilitate him or her or it getting a sudden leg up in the fight. Like, oh, that wasn't my real form. I also can turn into a dragon, breathe fire, whatever. That's an option. Or my favorite is just start ramping up the HP. Like, if you have a rogue and they get their sneak attack turn 1, they're an assassin, they deal 90 points of damage. Okay. That gets rid of a third of his health. Originally, that would have one-shot him, but now it's a third. Because, good lord, I'm not dealing with a one-shot death for my BBEG. Now, while that would make the rogue feel good, it would kind of diminish the fun combat encounter that you had planned for everybody else. So just to have them last long enough to have fun. is kind of the key. Don't make it obvious where it's like, okay, we've hammered this guy with 500 points of damage, but no one's having fun. Why hasn't he dropped? I'm saying just change them enough to give them a fighting chance to stick in it long enough so that you can use the things that you plan to be fun. Like if you had a really fun combat encounter using like a lot of vertical movement and then they just immediately grab the flying enemy and just like attach a big rock to his foot and drag him to the ground. Give him enough HP so that you can escape the bonds and go up so that you can have that vertical combat that you were looking for. It won't last as long, but give him enough HP and abilities and minions popping out of the walls to have the combat counter last long enough for you to show off your stuff. That's kind of my advice on improvising a combat encounter. It's just being able to react and change based on what's going on. Like if you had a spellcaster and you had a spell list for them, and then a player casts Fireball, and it's going to obliterate most of the enemies, and it's going to just breeze through this combat encounter that was supposed to be the big focal point of the session. Well, suddenly that little spellcaster in the back who's only been casting Firebolts this whole combat, suddenly he has Counterspell on him, and he's been saving his one scroll for this particular occasion. I mean, really, it's not a huge change. It's just, yep, somebody has Counterspell, but now he's out, or whatever. Just, you know, something to extend the fight long enough for it to be enjoyable. Because if you let your players immediately get rid of the fun part of the session, well, then what was the point? If your combat is one of the big things of the session, you need to be able to improvise to make it more fun. That means having it last long enough, having the enemies deal enough damage to be a legitimate threat to the party, to challenge them, have them be smart and intelligent and make quick decisions instead of just having all of them act mindless and chuck themselves towards the enemies. Because that's no fun for the players to just be in a meat grinder where they don't move, the enemies just walk towards them, are slow, are easy to kill, and then it's just this slog of just nothing going on for so long. It's no fun for anybody, in my opinion, and I just suggest being able to improvise to make it more fun and quicker. Now, um, the other side of that same coin is the TPK. This is an easy scale to sort of overbalance, and then once you get into the range of fairness, you give over all control of the combat to the dice. And the dice, they are a fickle mistress. That is what they are, because sometimes your players will crit all the time and obliterate your enemies, and you'll be like, oh, that lasted a long time, it was solid, it was a good fight. And then the other times they will roll dog shit, and your enemies will roll amazing. And then everybody dies, and that sucks, and that's no fun. So, it's that classic DM meme of just, ooh, I didn't see that crit there, that didn't happen. Uh, well, that's kind of the lazy way out, where it's like you're just fudging dice rolls. It can also be good just to sort of change up tactics for the enemies. Like, instead of having them all dogpile enemies and taking the most efficient actions, have them take the most character-driven actions. It's what my NPC would do, is what I love to say about this. Uh, like, if you have a bunch of kobolds and like half them are gone, but they are still doing pretty well in the fight, have a few of them run away because they're just too scared. Or if it's a dragon, you can have it just start laughing and spend a turn or two not even attacking the players and just sort of guffawing at their pathetic attempts to harm it. Oh, it's just paper cuts what they're attempting. I mean, it's just, you can really have fun with this side of it, because the key is just once things start looking south for the players, make some sort of a change to the combat, give them a leg up. Like a piece of terrain suddenly happens, and so there's something that endangers them and the NPCs. Like they're fighting in the jungle, and a sudden earthquake erupts, and then like stuff falls over, and so they need to make deck saves. The NPCs need to make deck saves, and most of the NPCs happen to fail. Now that's partly fudging rolls, but I mean it's not that bad. And then things are suddenly more even or whatever. These are sort of the easy changes, along with again tweaking the HP mid-fight, where you just lower it a bit so they're a bit easier to take down, that kind of thing. One-hit enemies and minions are a really fun one, where it's just like if the players hit it with just one hit, gone. Instead of having, oh, you hit this kobold with 4 damage, he's not dead. No, just like if you hit him with practically anything above 1 damage, he's gone. Once they hit like a certain level, it's sort of more of a you have to get experience with it, trying things out, seeing what works, what players will find believable, and things like that. And that's sort of the delicate balance you need to strike. But it's an important balance that every DM needs to learn how to manage. And I'd say of all of the elements of improvisation, improvising in a fight is the most important. Mostly just because it's the one that decides will the campaign continue or not, and will the dungeon crawl be fun or easy. Because some players enjoy being like heroic and ultra powerful and like just cleaning house in a dungeon, and that's good for like sometimes like right after a level up, giving them a couple of easy fights so they can try out their new powers and whatever. But you still need to be able to challenge them, and actual balance, like an even fight, is not the ideal. The ideal is a fight that's a little bit too tough or a little bit too easy, depending on what you want out of it. You need to think about the purpose of a fight more than the actual numbers going into it. Like, what do you want a fight to be? Do you want it to be a setback? Do you want it to be severely dangerous? Do you want it to be deadly? Do you want a TPK? These are all questions that you will need to answer in your decision making process. And yeah, so that's improvising a fight. Next is the one that no one can really teach, which is improvising something cool in the session. That's just a cool thing, a cool concept, a cool idea, a cool thingamajigger, you know? Uh, Honestly, my best recommendation here is get inspiration, read books, and steal like a maniac. And this is something that I'm going to advise for the entire concept of improvising in D&D, and that is steal like your life depends on it, because by God, there are tons of great fantasy writers out there. Not even, hell, non-fantasy, just things, cool books, movies, TV shows, cool shit out there that you can just grab and shove into your game. And the more obscure it is, the better. If you really like that one young adult fantasy series from your teenage years that no one ever else really got into, and they're super unpopular, horribly written, there's just one cool thing in it, grab it, shove it in your game, call her a day, you're a genius. Because the key here is not to be original necessarily, but to be fun. You can give it a twist on it or whatever, but just improvising for the sake of fun is the important thing, and that means grabbing from good sources. Like, if you really, really love one scene from a movie, you can pseudo recreate it by having similar elements show up in your game. Like, a favorite of mine was I had my players fighting a Trask, but I turned them all into like challenge rating 20-ish enemies. So it was an interesting fight. And it was mostly off the cuff because I was like, well, you know what? I might as well. Why not do it? Because I had the tokens lying around on roll 20, so it was just a fun session. And it was, or fun fight, I should say, but it was just a weird fight. It was sudden. They had to get familiar with abilities out of nowhere. And it was just fun, you know? Like, as far as I could tell, the players really liked it. I really liked it because it was cool to watch, and it was just because I was kind of feeling kaiju stuff at the time. I had watched Godzilla, Pacific Rim. I was into that whole sort of state of mind where it was like, big things fighting equals cool. Therefore, make players big, fight big thing. No, fight biggest thing. Oh, God. That really is the key. Just steal stuff that sounds cool. Just think of things that you find cool and will be cool to the players. Thinking of cool things that involve the players is the key. Always. You like Cthulhu? Shove the Star Spawn into your game. Because it doesn't matter if it makes sense. You can come with a reason later. Point is, if it's fun right now, put it in. Most of the time, that's fine. Because the key really is fun. Story structure, narrative, plot, that's important, but it's not the deciding factor. The number one concern is fun, most of the time, for most DMs and most groups. So, if you really like some sort of fiction or some trope, something, I'm just telling you, it's okay to grab, you know? Even if your players know it, or one of them do, or whatever, it's still okay. Just put a twist, change the names, make it different enough. Make it your own. And that's really what improvising is. It's just grabbing things and making it your own. Like you had a plan, and then you improvise, and it becomes a new plan, the plan of the current you instead of past you. In similar fashion, coming up with an NPC is usually just I have a cool idea that I'm stealing from various sources, shoving them together in a blender, and pop out the fun session. And the fun fight, well, fun fight concepts, or, you know, making the fight your own version of events to a degree by changing HPs, changing dice rolls, changing whatever. Because as the DM, your job is to create fun. And so whatever you can do to try and make that fun, more, may as well. Because I find that improvising is, and this may sound weird, but it's more fun for me because it's like I didn't think of that, and then I'm kind of just sitting there with the players in equal measure, going, uh, "Should I have done that?" And thinking, "Yeah, I definitely should have done that," because you're discovering for the first time as well. Like if you throw a random new element into it, and you're trying out a new voice, and you're just having fun with it, go with the flow, because you should try and make the game fun for yourself and the players if you can. And I find that improvising, for me at least, is very fun. I go into very few sessions with a rigid plan. I mean, I have a general outline, of course, but I try to steer clear of like locking myself into a plan for anything because if you make things, too rock solid, nothing's going to be fun. I mean, I had a session where I suddenly turned an NPC gay because, well, I thought a player would enjoy that little experience with a friendly NPC, and just talking to them and having an interesting dynamic with them. I mean, that was cool, and it, led into even more fun over the course of many, many sessions. Uh, you know? So, realistically, at the end of the day, for this whole video, all I want to say to you as a DM is try things, something's going to work out for you, and you're better off trying and failing than you are, you know, not trying and still failing. Because if things go wrong when you have too rigid of a plan, it's really going to go wrong because the whole plan doesn't work. But if things go wrong when you improvise the plan, well, improvise again, try again. That's all the advice I can give you. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and if this video does even remotely well, I will make a follow-up, and I would really appreciate a subscription uh, and a like if you would. So thank you very much, and if you want more improvising advice, even though there's already a ton on D&D on the internet, but if you want more of mine, um, leave a comment or do all the other stuff that I said. Thank you for watching, and I hope you made it to the end. Have a good one.